Hello, this is Bernie Wall, and I have another short video for you with some IELTS tips for your preparation. And today I want to talk to you about books. So not necessarily physical books, but they could be online resources. And these are all the things that you need to help you to prepare well for your IELTS. And if you're looking for bands 7 and 8, and most of the students that I work with are aiming for these high bands, then it's even more important that you have a good range of materials to make sure that you have the right level of English to attain these very high bands. So as usual, I have a short presentation, and I'll just get that up and shared with you, and then we can get started. Sorry, it's being a bit temperamental. Okay, so this is the serious student. If you are serious about your IELTS and about getting a high band, then you need to think beyond the practice tests and look at other resources that are going to ensure that you have the right level of language that you need. So the first thing is a grammar book or access to a good grammar resource. Grammar underlies a lot of language, and it's particularly important in IELTS because good grammar will help you to use English well, both in speaking and in writing. And it's also quite important for the other parts of the test as well, because many students lose marks in the listening and the reading, not because they cannot find the answers, but because they record them incorrectly on their answer sheet. And often this recording goes wrong because they haven't taken into account a certain grammatical point that is either present in the question or in the text. And quite often it will be where you might need to go to change singular to plural, or perhaps even to change from a noun to an adjective, for example. So it's very important that you can spot these things. There are rules that you need to follow in English. So the rule that you're probably all very familiar with is about agreement with singular nouns and singular verbs, plural nouns, plural verbs. And this is one of the most common mistakes made in writing. But there are other rules like this as well. And if you understand these rules and then know about them, then that will help you to avoid making mistakes when you use language in the IELTS exam, in particular with the speaking and writing, but with the others as well, as I mentioned before. So a reference book or a resource where you can check the rule, where you can perhaps practice something that you're not quite sure of or need a little more help with, is really vital, and it's a very important part of your material bank for preparing for the exam. So here are a couple of recommendations. The first is English Grammar in Use. This is an intermediate book, but it is very, very comprehensive. It's by a man called Raymond Murphy, published by Cambridge. This is a book that's familiar to, I would say, most English language learners. And teachers usually just call it Murphy. But it's very, very concise. It gives very clear explanations, and it has some good exercises for you to practice the grammar points so that you are sure that you both understand and can use the grammar. This is one I like particularly. It's aimed at advanced learners, and what I like especially about it is that the first half of the book, it takes a lot of grammar areas and it gives you like a mini test, and from that test you can discover how much you are clear about, where the places are that you're not so clear or you don't understand well, and then that will allow you to do more practice on just that aspect of the grammar point. So it's quite a good diagnostic to check your grammar, but then the second half of the book gives you plenty of practice to do this. And again, there are some nice clear explanations about the grammar points. If you already have a grammar book, then that's fine. They are much of a muchness, really. So if you have one already, then feel free to just continue using it. There's no need to change. And if you don't have a grammar book, you can either purchase or borrow one of the two that I've mentioned, or you can find an online resource. Online resources are good for quick checks. So if you, for example, wanted to find something about using present simple or past simple, then you can just key that in and find the information straight away. They are more limited in what they give you in terms of practice to the two books I've mentioned above, but they are really quite good for trying to find out very quickly about something. And the two sites I tend to go to if I want to check something, or if I want to recommend one exercise to a student, would be the British Council site Learn English or the BBC Learning English. And these are quite easy to find online. There are some good sites, university sites as well, that give good grammar and language resources aimed at students, obviously, who are going to take up courses there, but they do have some good grammar exercises. So that's another place you might like to look if you haven't got your own grammar book. Okay, the second book that I really feel you need is an English dictionary. Now, by that I mean English. It's not bilingual. It's not English, Spanish, English, German, English, French. It's just an English dictionary. And it's important because there are lots of words in English. This is, I think, Oxford Dictionary's information that there's 170,000 words in current use. There are lots and lots of others that are archaic or only used in literature, but these are the ones that are in current daily use. So it is a lot of words. The other problem, and this is a particular problem for IELTS, is that many words have multiple meanings. And it's the multiple meanings that you won't necessarily find in a bilingual dictionary. So when you learn a new word, or you come across a new word in, say, an IELTS reading, and you want to check it, you really need to check it in an English dictionary, so that you have not only the definition of the word, but also the right meaning. So by all means, look at it in your bilingual dictionary to check what the word means in your own language, but be aware that that may not be the only meaning. And often students can get into difficulty because they only know one meaning of a word, and they don't know the other meanings. And that can either be a problem in the reading, or they can misuse that word in the writing. And bilingual dictionaries alone don't help with this, because they may only give one, a small one will only give one meaning, and a more, not advanced, but a bigger dictionary with more information may give more than one meaning, but it may not give the whole range. So the first, after you've worked out what the word means, you should go to an English dictionary to check on the different meanings. And here are some recommendations. Oxford, obviously the big dictionary people, but Cambridge also have their own English language dictionary, and these all have dictionaries for learners, so advanced learners in particular. So any of these are fine. Probably best to choose a UK or Australia base, because the language is the one that's in IELTS. But if you have an American dictionary, it's fine, because they will generally mention, if it's a good dictionary, they will mention British usages too. And choose one that's got lots of information. So if you compare the words in the different dictionaries, you see that some have more examples, more definitions, etc. than others. So choose the one that has the most, so that you've got a good range of information there. I use an online dictionary, and the one I use is Macmillan. I really like Macmillan because it gives you good definitions, it gives you synonyms, it gives you information on collocation, and it also gives you other links to the different forms of the word. And most online dictionaries will do this, but Macmillan for me is very easy to follow, and it's quite clear. The pages are quite clear on the site. So I have mine bookmarked, and I suggest you do the same, so that if you have your dictionary bookmarked on your device, then if you need to check a word or you need to find a quick synonym, if you're practicing writing, for example, you can very easily go to the page and pick one up. Okay, an IELTS course book. I think an IELTS course book is not a bad thing to have, especially if you're looking at band 7 and 8. Now, a few years ago, I used to advise against them for the main reason that they're generally aimed at teachers who would be using these books in a class. And you will find in an IELTS course book that there are some of the exercises that are just not relevant to people who are doing self-study. However, having said that, they do give some very good explanations about the material, and they also give advice on techniques and strategies, and they show you how to approach certain types of question, etc. So for all those reasons, I think they are a good thing to have, because the practice test books do not give you this kind of information. But be aware that if you do buy a course book, then some of the things that are in it, especially the group-based discussions, etc., are just not going to be suitable for you. But the rest of it will. Another reason that an IELTS course book is a good idea is because they take a step-by-step approach. So each unit will go in a particular way, and then the next unit will be dovetailed onto the first unit. So you're following a course, which is quite different from the way that a lot of students approach IELTS, which is by jumping from website to website and teacher to teacher, which is a little bit random. And when you're doing that kind of random study, it's very easy to have things fall through the gaps, and that you end up with certain aspects of the training just not being covered. So if you have a step-by-step approach, it's a much safer and better way really to preparing for the exam, and a course book will give you that step-by-step approach. They often come with extra material now, self-study books or online material that you can also use. So, this is all quite helpful for people who are working by themselves. However, the downside is they can be expensive, especially if you want to buy the audio CDs and all of the little bits, the workbooks and things that go with them. Having said that, you could look at your local library, or perhaps find some friends who've already finished their IELTS, and they may have one to pass on to you or to lend to you. So you don't always have to buy these books. You can often get them from other places. Okay, and there are two recommendations. The first is this Direct to IELTS by Sam McCarter. This is aimed at people who want high bands. So it's really for 7 and 8 band students. It's very comprehensive. It's particularly good for writing, and I would highly recommend, if you're looking for writing, to go for this one, because it's got some really good writing material in it. But it also covers the listening and the speaking and the reading as well. So that's a good choice. The other one that I also like is Focus on IELTS. Again, it's very thorough, it's very comprehensive, it gives lots of information, and there are lots of other things around it. The Direct to IELTS, for example, has some online practice tests. So if you buy the book, you get a special code and you can use the online material. If you already have a book, I know a lot of students like to use Barron's, which is fine. They are all useful. So don't rush out and buy a new one if you've already got one. So use the one that you've got. As I mentioned before, look in the library or borrow them from friends, because they can be expensive new, but there are always other places to get them. Okay, IELTS text practice books, of course. But remember that these are practice for the test. They are not improving your skills. They are not aimed at improving your English or improving your techniques or your strategies. They are simply testing you so that you know how you're going to perform in the test. So as such, they have value, but that value is not comprehensive. If you're looking for Band 7 and 8, you really do need more resources. So dictionaries, grammar books, as I mentioned before. And generally speaking, the practice testing that is contained in these books, such as the Cambridge books, should be done towards the end of your preparation. So in a classroom situation, when I was teaching in a classroom situation, we would probably do this testing 2 weeks before the exam, maybe 3 weeks before the exam, but not much before that. The rest of the time was spent on improving vocabulary, improving skills, making sure that the language level was at the right level for the band that people wanted. So do be aware of that. Because most students seem to have this as their only material, but it is important to have more things than just the Cambridge practice test books. So a wider range of resources. And there's only really one recommendation I would make, and that's the Cambridge practice test. I know there are others around, and that's fine. Use anything you can get your hands on. But if you're going to go out and buy one or borrow one, then I would go for these. They are the closest thing to the test itself, and written by the people who are engaged in producing the test. I would say 8 to 13 are the best because they're the most recent. But 1 to 6 are good. The early ones are not so good for speaking because the test changed. There are some other aspects of the test that have changed a little, but they are still valid. So the readings and listenings are still quite valid to use. And don't worry about doing them more than once. I use Cambridge books with a lot of my classes and a lot of my face-to-face work. And I've done some of these readings many times, but I don't remember all the questions or all the texts. So it's fine to do them more than once. And the final book or resource that I want to mention is Authentic Materials. Now, these are things that are aimed at native speakers, and it's writing, it's reading, it's listening material, and also video material, things that you find on TV or online, but things that are not actually adapted for students, but written directly for native speakers. And if you're looking for Band 7 and 8, this is the level of language that you need to aim for. So you should also be including some of this in your practice. It will give you a wide range of vocabulary and also a wide range of different structures, idioms, colloquial language, a lot of things that you can incorporate into your IELTS. These I mentioned before, there's a lot of different types of reading, listening, you can improve your vocabulary as well. And it is quite important to address this. And the other nice thing about Authentic Materials is that you can choose things that you're interested in, or things that you want to find out about, whereas the books tend to put the topics on you. Here you can pick whatever you want to look at or listen to or read. And you can choose some fun things, like movies, for example. I'm a great fan of movies. They're less useful for skills practice than some other things, but they are relaxing and fun, and you're still being exposed to English. Okay, let's have a look at a few. Radio, probably the best if you need listening practice, radio, better than television and movies because a large percentage of that comes visually. And I would highly recommend the BBC World Service. It's a wonderful service. It's available in all countries. It's got a real range of program types, different topics, lots and lots of different accents, which is also helpful for the listening. So that would be my #1 resource for radio. These news and current affairs programs are also really excellent. Any discussion programs, I think The Economist does an online discussion program. And remember, quite often with some things you can turn the screen off so that you're just listening and not watching as well. Magazine programs, these are more sort of light programs, like breakfast programs where you've got a range of more social type content. TV, again, I mentioned that in the previous one. BBC Breakfast is a type of magazine program on TV, but you also get them on radio. Discussions are always good. So there are lots of political discussions that you might want to watch. Documentaries such as the BBC's Planet Earth, very good because we get these topics of environment, pollution, etc. So again, really good things to look at, and try and, do it where you can absorb something. So perhaps you might hear 1 or 2 words, write them down. If you can put subtitles, and I don't mean subtitles in your language, I mean subtitles in English that are intended really for the deaf. If you can get these subtitles, they can really help you to get the most from television programs. And magazines and journals, obviously. So things like New Scientist, Economist, National Geographic, these are quite heavy in a way, and the language is quite dense. They're useful because they cover the topics that are in IELTS, but you don't have to read the whole magazine. Just read 1 article or just read part of an article. So don't make it a chore. Just make it something that's a little bit lighter and more interesting. And your own journals for your field, because they will be something that you can understand well because the vocabulary will be familiar. They're also things that are going to help you in your own job because it's your industry. And quite often they will feed into the types of readings and listenings that you get in the IELTS because they cover a wide range of topics. Stories, novels, poems, anything is good for picking up vocabulary, finding new phrases. I mean, stories and novels are not so appropriate for the writing, but for the speaking, they could well be, because you might get the question about a story you've read, or a novel you've read, or something you've read. And then websites. So there are lots of websites with specific interests, specific areas that you can also look at and find information. So since the internet came, there's just no excuse for not engaging with this type of content. And I just wanted very briefly to mention my own English language website. It's a website aimed at English language learners at advanced level. It uses a lot of authentic material. So we'll take an authentic listening or a reading, and we will work questions around it so that you can get the best and the most out of that content. We also cover vocabulary, grammar, punctuation, writing, speaking, everything. Anything to do with advanced English, it's on there. And I wanted to mention it because as it's Valentine's Day, I have a very special Valentine's gift for you. And I'll give you the link where you can go and find out more about this, but it's to do with this website. And I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot. It's a little bit old-fashioned now, and we are in the process of upgrading it. But as it stands, there's still a lot of exercises on there. In fact, there's over 8,000 pages of exercises. So you can see here news, grammar, listening, writing, vocabulary, reading, and here's a picture of the grammar and usage page. I'm not sure how clear that is, but each of these is a separate section with exercises in. So you can see there's a lot about good English style. We have a section on adjectives and adverbs. There's a section on tenses and on verbs and on prepositions. So everything you need to improve your English language is on there. And as I say, because of Valentine's Day and also my birthday, which is in February too, I wanted to give you a very special gift. So if you look underneath this video, you'll find a link there to the site, and you can go over there and have a look at it. Okay, but just to recap, don't just rely on the practice test. All of these other books that I'm recommending are also part of your armory, if you like, for preparing for a high band at IELTS. And by combining these things, you will give yourself the best chance of achieving the band that you want. So I'll stop sharing there. And thank you for watching this video. I'm sorry if it was a little bit long. I have an associated article on my website, IELTS Learning Tips, and if you go over there, IELTSlearningtips.com, you'll find the article with links to all of those books and resources. So you don't have to type them in, just go to the article and follow the links and you'll be there. And thank you for listening. Please pass this information on to any of your friends who are taking IELTS, and good luck with your preparation and practice, and I'll see you on the next video.